What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Davidson podcast, where I get to interview amazing people and help share their wisdom with the world. Let me know your takeaways and feel free to connect with the guest. I'm aiming to build a community around coaching, self-development, leadership, where people are not afraid to be their most authentic versions of themselves. You can find us on video by searching the Davidson podcast on YouTube. Welcome and enjoy the ride. Hey, what's up, everyone? I'm excited to introduce to you Alyssa Gerontides, who is our top account executive in LinkedIn Learning right now. She's awesome. And yeah, really excited to share with you her tips for success and what makes you so
Hi, Davidson. Really excited to be here and love your podcast. So thanks for having me.
Yeah. Well, thanks for doing this. Well, I wanted to first start with, how'd you end up at LinkedIn? Like, what made you choose LinkedIn over the millions of companies out there?
That's a great question. So I started at LinkedIn actually when I was in college. I started through the GSO internship program, so LinkedIn's global sales program. And I had my eye on it because it's something similar to what I studied in college. It was a media studies major, super fascinated with the different ways the world is interconnected through social media. LinkedIn was a very natural fit to that mission. And I applied and was lucky enough to get the internship through lots of different in-mailing of recruiters and people on the sales team, and basically like trying to score a deal there, and joined through the customer success team on talent solutions. So that's how I ended up ultimately at LinkedIn. But I think what always excited me was its mission to bring economic opportunity, feel very close to that, and been here ever since.
That's awesome. I feel like some of our best people come from the GSO internship. And also here, it's quite competitive.
It's so fun. The cohort I had and I are still really close. And actually a few of them are even still AEs or SDs in the org right now too. So the internship program was a lot of fun. I really loved it.
Yeah. And I mean, so that's awesome. So I also use LinkedIn to get into LinkedIn as well. To Garrett. So what I did was I just reached out to all the Asians who were in sales and LinkedIn. So yeah, that's smart. It sounds like, clearly we're both very passionate about LinkedIn. So that's, yeah. I mean, what advice would you give to people? Cause I think there's the right way of sending requests, right? And then there's the wrong way. What advice would you give to, someone who's in college that, it's oh, I want to reach out to people, but I'm not sure if I'm doing it correctly.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I do think you're right. There is a right way. And sometimes I wouldn't say wrong way, but maybe misguided way. And I love personally reaching out just to learn more. And I think that's what helped me a lot of times when I was going through the internship process or my first job at a college, was making sure that you're coming at it with an open mind. I was reaching out to people at LinkedIn, but I was also reaching out to people in completely different industries and companies and different kinds of roles, really just to learn more about it. So I would say number one advice here is just align with what your objectives are as opposed to the big name brands. While LinkedIn has a huge name brand and it's a big company, ultimately I chose to be here because of the conversations I had with people. I loved how passionate everyone was who I talked to at LinkedIn and the company's mission. So I think it's really important when you are sending in-mails and connection requests and doing these things to come at it from an angle of really excited to get to know you, would love to hear what you're doing because I'm so curious about it, talk me more through it, as opposed to, I see this internship role, can you refer me? And it does happen a lot, and it's okay if you do say that. I think it's good to be upfront. However, it's really awesome when you give people the opportunity to learn more from something you might not have known before.
Yeah, I like that approach, right? I think too many of us, I think because you're genuinely passionate about LinkedIn's mission, and it was clear that you did a little bit more research, right? It wasn't just, oh, it's LinkedIn, I want to work there. I mean, obviously that's part of it, but it definitely seemed like you really got to know the culture and what makes LinkedIn tick. So that's
Yeah.
nice. And also, thank you so much. I know you also helped one of my closest friends, Ivana, with the community at Asana. She told me about that. So, I really appreciate you for that.
Oh, of course. She's such a wonderful person and so good at her job. And I think that's just another instance where how cool LinkedIn was able to bridge two people together in connections. And I went through my network, saw that I had a really good friend and that I knew at a company she was applying to. And I think it's a great way to use the LinkedIn network to help others to reach more opportunities too.
How does one like cultivate that, like, because clearly you're always adding value, right? And it's like almost like innate, like it's not you're intentionally like tit for tat, right? It's kind of just like you're just being a good person, right? But how does one, I guess, get to that point, right? Because it doesn't happen overnight, right?
Well, thank you. I appreciate that accolade. I mean, it's just in your everyday, in terms of what you decide to do. I think you do the same, and I think a lot of people that we work with also do. And it's rather, I don't. I'm trying to find the right way to position it. I guess it's more so about helping the people around you, and if you see opportunity to help, why not? Especially because it always comes back around, and it never hurts you to help someone else. So I think it's really just, again, around keeping an open mind to all the different opportunities and people in your life and things you could be doing, and taking note of that and helping out when you can.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, right? Because I do think, especially in the like a time of COVID, like a lot of us are kind of in that fight or flight mode. So sometimes we're like, well, I got to get mine first before I help, right? But it seems very clear that like that's actually when you should help the most, right? Because it's just like like it's being a good person first, and then everything else. But I guess, was there any like mentors or any people that like helped you kind of have this mindset, or were you just always like this from like when you're a toddler?
No, tons. I have tons of mentors and have along the way, and I'll shout them all out. But a lot of people have guided me through and taught me, and I would say it's less about making sure you're doing good deeds and good tasks, but more so giving back. And I think for me, even when you think back to that internship program I was applying to, the people who helped me get this internship now, if there's ways that I can help them in their future, it's really great to give back in that sense. And so I always try and get involved when there's opportunity to be that person in the same position who helped me. So like the internship program, when I started, it was a 3.5 month program. I was aligned with a few different mentors and people, and they helped me navigate what full-time role I wanted to roll into. And so now there's an opportunity at LinkedIn for me to be a mentor to interns who come into the GSO program. So I always raise my hand because someone helped me get to where I am now. So I think it's just a constant loop. It is learned, these things, some parts of it are innate, but a lot of it comes from the mentors they've had. And then a lot of it is my family. And I look up towards my parents and my sister and brother-in-law, and how they operate and see the world and the things they do. And so I've learned a lot of that just in our relations as well.
That's awesome. Yeah, sounds like you're definitely surrounding yourself with awesome people. So makes a lot of sense why you're the same way. I'm also curious, because I do think like the GSO, I think stands for Global Sales Organization.
Mm-hmm.
Like the GSO intern like is so competitive, right? So what advice would you give to people who like that's like their goal, but they just haven't been able to like get that, to them it's such a big setback. What advice would you give to them to just how they can pick themselves up and be able to move on and move forward?
It's the age-old saying, when one door closes, another opens. And while I got into the GSO program, that doesn't mean I didn't get into other programs, and LinkedIn opened itself up. So I think it's hard when you have blinders on, and it's really disheartening to be applying for an internship and not get the position. But ultimately, I think taking a big step back and realizing there's so many different things that could happen now, and what next is really exciting. The other thing is, there's so much context you don't know about. And I always try and just make sure to say to people going through this internship process, it's really rigorous. There's so many people applying. And in the midst of a pandemic, it's really hard. Some internships are getting taken away. I think it's just make sure to do whatever you can in your power. And outside of that, you can't control what you can't control. And so if you're putting yourself in the best position, being very authentic to who you are, then hopefully that'll show through in interviews and processes. And if you don't get the position, that doesn't mean that your authentic self isn't, qualified for it. It just could be something completely external to what you realize. So I think the best advice I could give for someone who's not getting admitted to a program that they want is, it's okay to be sad about it, but to make sure to continue to promote yourself and be yourself and hone in on your strengths and areas where you want to grow and learn and continue on, because you will find a fit. I mean, you will. And so I think it is important, just like you said, Davidson, to really keep your head up and keep at it.
Yeah, that's timely advice, right? Especially because, we did have some at LinkedIn, we did have some layoffs recently, but it seems like a lot of people are have transitioned well, and seems like they're doing well now. So thank you for that. And I know you're like also a killer sales development rep as well. Like, what are one or two things that you've learned from when you were working with your account executives? Because clearly, like, you had some pretty good mentors as well, right? Or else you wouldn't be like crushing it so much.
I owe everything to my AEs. I had a killer group of AEs that helped bring me under their wing. I was with, Clugs, Ron John, Ben Terry, Ryan Wright, Shelby Podwell, Krista Mossy, and Anna Offstein, and a few other people here and there. But I think what made me really excited about the sales development role was those partnerships and getting really involved in what we're a strategic team and what can I be doing to help you. And ultimately, they all became mentors and coaches to me along the way. And that's why I loved SD. And that's why it was really fun, because I'm making cold calls. It's a grind. SD is a grind. You're making cold calls, probably 100 a day. But what's exciting about it is anytime I'd make an opportunity for an AE, it wasn't just an opportunity or a scheduled meeting. It was exciting. I would ping my AEs. I would chat with them about it. I'd talk to them about the company, and they're the ones who really helped make it come to life. So I think the biggest driving success and excitement I found in SD was that relationship aspect and the partnership, because I was very lucky. And I think actually any SD who gets to be paired with an AE in the org, there's a really it's a very unique experience that you get to learn so closely from some of the AEs, and it made my transition easier as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. What's one thing that most SDs or BDRs, I guess some companies call it BDRs as well. Mm-hmm. What's something that like you think most SDs or BDRs aren't doing, but they should be doing?
So this is a big one. I think a lot of times you get rejected as an SD, and I say you are getting rejected. You are not getting rejected, but your meeting's getting rejected, or the ask is getting rejected. And as an SD, I think a lot of my very tactical success came from taking that no to an if not now, then when. Mm. And when you're able to organize, be highly strategic about, the no's you're getting and saying, okay, now's not a good time. When is a good time? Or why is it not a good time now? Opening up that additional layer of discovery sets you apart, and then also helps you create ops for the next month. And so before I would come into the next month, I would already have 10 people. Here are the 10 people that told me they can't talk to me now, but because I asked when they could talk to me, I now have next month's ops already set up, and I'll just, reach out to them again and cold call them every day. And so I think it sets up a really good pipeline for yourself. And oftentimes when you see a no, it's easy to just put it in the trash or respond, say thank you, make a note of it. And instead, it might just be a no. Like someone could just be really busy, but they could be interested later down the line.
That's good advice. Yeah. I do think most people, when they get a no, they're like, oh, just moving on. Right. And that that could be, a lot of pipeline. So that's good advice. What's something you wish you knew when you were what do you think most sales development / BDRs like should know when transitioning into an account executive role?
It's a lot slower. Things aren't going to happen as quickly as they did in SD. And SD or BDR, as soon as you made the opportunity, the meeting likely didn't happen too much longer after that. You know pretty immediately if you got your bump or you're qualified or whatever you call it. In AE world, it doesn't usually work like that unless you get lucky and you have some quick wins here and there. Usually, you're taking a meeting, but that's just now the first 5 to 15%, and then you still have the rest of the process. And so I think it's hard sometimes to transition from an SD BDR type role to a full cycle sales role when now it's not that's great. You got your up from 5 to 15%, but in order for it to actually help towards your quota, you need to get it to 100%. So I think a lot of it is around developing patience and being able to ride the highs and the lows, because sometimes there's going to be periods where you don't close anything, but you're building pipeline. And in SD, it's a lot different. It's quick. And if you aren't building pipeline, you're building pipeline basically for the next week. And in AE, you could be building it for an entirely different quarter. So I think that would be my biggest advice for handling that change is just being patient and riding the wave.
That's helpful. Yeah, that's good advice. I think, you're right. Like reflecting on my BDR days, like things were way faster and I was so used to that. And then, that's pretty good advice. I remember like being like, why aren't I closing yet? Right. And it takes, most AE roles, it takes at least 6 months to really ramp where you're good. You feel comfortable with the product. Like, you have like a pretty good process. You're like rolling. So that's good stuff. You are, you're over 400%. You hit like over 400% of quota for, the quarter. What do you think, helped led you to that? It's never just one thing, right? But if you were to reflect and just distill it down to like 3 specific things that like have helped you that maybe you're doing differently than the average account executive, what would you say those are?
Yeah. So great question. I think the account executives that we work with, including yourself, all are so creative around their strategies, and everyone's doing so well in their different ways. So it's really exciting. I think, the first thing is I learn a lot from my peers. So people like you and, people in our entire small business team and mid-market and enterprise team. I think one thing that has led me to success this past quarter is taking a lot of what others are doing and making it my own and really understanding what's working for others. I think it's really unique that we're at a company where there's so many rock stars and so many people doing awesome things. And so I take it and I love it. And it's really helpful for me, whether it be processes or conversations or talking points. There's a lot I learned from other people. So a lot of my success really has to do with others helping me and coaching me. And so that's a big thing. I think maybe number 2 is I have a lot of fun customers I've gotten the chance to work with. I love working with the customers I work with. I have a lot of people in HR or ops or sales that I've just been very lucky to get to partner with on some of their initiatives. And so I think that's been really fun. And, you can only control so much who you're talking to, but been very lucky and fortunate to have leaders who really care about the development of their team, and it's something we can hone in on and solve for actual business cases for, and help make their employees a little bit happier and stay longer, hopefully where they're at. So I think that's another thing is where it's just a really exciting time to be talking to customers. We're in the middle of a pandemic, and if there's something we can do to help, I love that, and it's really fun. And then the last thing I'd maybe say is just really highly organized. I'm extremely anal, very nitpicky on my deal management, aligning timelines. I know we've talked about this, but setting milestones, aligning timelines, and things of that sort. I think keeping a very tight book and making sure that you are following up with your promises to customers, as well as, give and take, making sure that they're holding up their end as well is really important if you both have a task at hand that you're trying to accomplish. So I think those would be three main things, but I owe a lot of it just to you guys and to my mentors and to our team, because a lot of it I've learned from everyone else. So I think it's been a big attribute to it.
That's awesome. I mean, clearly, like the common theme I get from doing this podcast with people like you, Andy Linder, Bree, and Ellie, and Jordan Katz, and everyone, Mimi, Liz, like everyone I've interviewed so far, like it's very clear that, the President's Club winners are like, I guess like the three things you just said, like everyone is very humble, right? Clearly, like, you guys are all really smart and intelligent and just like get it. But then there's like an innate humility that you also hear, right, in your answer. And it's genuine too, right? Because sometimes like you can kind of tell when someone's just saying that and you're kind of just like, okay, you don't actually believe that. But like, I actually felt that like when you said that. So that's really cool. And yeah, being super organized is definitely another thing that everyone really is really important, right? Like Jordan is like all about that. Like I feel like he runs like such a tight ship, and that he's been promoted recently, right? So that's cool. No, I like doing these because like after you hear it like 5 or 6 times, they're like, all right, an accident, And and the last thing is that you guys are all super passionate about like not only LinkedIn's mission, right? But then also like LinkedIn Learning too, right? So I think that's really interesting to see like how passionate everyone is. Like it's like, oh, like it's pretty cool, Sometimes like, cause I don't know, like after like sometimes you do get like jaded and you're kind of like, oh, like I'm not having the best week, right? And then like, when you talk to like people like you're like, oh no, this job is awesome. But sometimes you forget, especially in the middle of a pandemic,
Oh yeah, I think that's so normal too. I mean, I was just talking to someone today about that, how we're in sales and we're selling the same product technically over and over again, but there's no one, deal or LinkedIn Learning case that's the same. Everything is different. And so I think that's why it's so exciting to me. And that you're working with different people. They all have somewhat different initiatives, and while they could generally be similar, everyone's solving for engagement problems or retention problems, but each individual you're working with is so different. Each company you're working with has its own value and missions. And I think that's why I get so passionate about LinkedIn Learning. You learn so much about someone's business, and truly, you can't sell LinkedIn Learning unless it really does tie into businesses' initiatives. And so I think it's a cool opportunity to work with a really cool product that's actually making a difference. So I hope in people's journeys at a company.
No, I love that because I don't know. I mean, I hear you, but sometimes like I feel like I don't know. I do think like on the SMB side, it is harder to tie it to like a specific like business pain, especially if it's like a departmental, like they're like, hey, I'm trying to do like PowerPoint and Excel for like the IT department. Sometimes I'm just like, all right, I'll just take it, Yeah,
I get it.
Thoughts around that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing is, why are you talking to me about PowerPoint? Clearly, you have a need that someone's coming to us, talking to a sales representative about having a PowerPoint problem. That person's probably experiencing a lot of pain around their team not knowing how to use PowerPoint. And it sounds like a silly topic, but I still get jazzed about it because I'm like, shoot, if I can make your life easier by giving your teammates tools to learn Microsoft PowerPoint, then that's probably fixed. And the next time you have a problem around Outlook or shoot, I always forget how to run a VLOOKUP. The amount of people I've had teach me how to relearn how to do VLOOKUP on Excel so many times, like that time would have been saved so much if I had just gone on LinkedIn Learning and taken the course. So yeah. I think even for SMB, like if anything, I would say especially in SMB, because you have smaller companies, they may seem like smaller pains sometimes, but truly, I can guarantee you very few people like just taking calls with salespeople. And so there's probably a pain there that they have. If you can eliminate it, I think that's what keeps you going. That's where the juice is. And yeah, take the win for sure. But I think, and I would too, but I think it's important to remember sometimes, and I have to remind myself all the time, like, okay, this person's talking to me because there's a real, a real need there. So it's really going to make a difference in someone's life. And if you can align and figure out that it actually would help, then you just help someone out with LinkedIn Learning. So
that's a good takeaway. I got to go deeper, man. I feel like, it makes sense in theory, but sometimes like, I mean, back when we were getting a lot more inbounds, right? I was just like, dude, I feel like I don't even have time to do, like it was such a, but that's a good reminder that, we should always like try to go deeper, Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I feel like, you also like have fun at work, right? And you're also like, like, because I do think there's like some people that like they're just so focused at work that there's some people, like I'll just say like some of the previous companies I've worked at, there were some reps that were like just so focused on work that like it didn't seem like they enjoyed the job as much. Like it wasn't as fun anymore, but they're just, well, I make a shit ton of money, right?
Mm-hmm.
I guess like what advice would you give to people to just like have a little bit more fun at work,
I love that question. I'd say it's two-pronged. So goes back to the being organized section, which is so actually to have fun, you have to be very highly organized in your work. For me, so how I personally, address that fun and staying engaged, and I get burnt out time to time, and I'm not always happy, and not everyone always sees that side. But I think what's important for me is being highly strategic with my time, my asks, my yeses, what things I'm attending. And I'm one to speak. I do get myself involved in a lot of projects and jobs and things of that sort. But have you heard of the priority matrix before?
Oh, I think I think David Crenshaw like talks about, is it kind of like the urgent versus important?
Yeah. Exactly. So that's how I structure my time based off of what's most urgent and important. Then I go into important, but maybe not as urgent. Then I flip flop and go into urgent, but not important. And then I'll go like that. Not as important, not as urgent, but still integral to my day-to-day success. Things like, in mailing or continuous outreach, those might fall in that category. Whereas someone who needs a contract adjusted for their sign by date of tomorrow that's going to be important and urgent. I'll wake up early for that one. So I think that's the first step, is managing your time really well so that you feel really comfortable to take fun coffee chats. And I don't know, I go on walks in the middle of my day, and I'll have, like, sometimes my roommates and I will do an hour-long lunch during the middle of the workday since we're all working from home, and do something fun. And I feel excited and able to take that time and actually disconnect for a little bit, because I know what my plan of action is when I return, and I know what I got done beforehand. So for me, I definitely take advantage of fun. And when we are in the office, I'm the first person on the ice cream floor at 2 p.m. And I go, Glenn's on my team is notorious for the 11 a.m. lunch. And if I can get down at 11 a.m. to get lunch and take my break, I do, and I'll enjoy it. We have whole feasts at LinkedIn, which but I think it's so important to be so careful about your time so that you can take the fun moments and really enjoy it. Because then when you're there, you don't have to be stressing or looking at your email. You know what you need to do, and it's going to be there when you come back, especially during COVID. There's always going to be work too. So it's something I struggle with as well. But I think first and foremost is be organized and careful about your time, and then get super stoked, raise your hand for fun activities, or take some mental breaks even away from the computer and away from LinkedIn, and rejuvenate. And that's been really helpful for me.
That's a good point. And I feel like most people don't talk about the rejuvenation period, especially in a job that does require a lot of attention, right? Like what advice would you give to people who they just can't seem to turn off? Like even on that, like 2 week, the one vacation, that they like enjoy, that they should be enjoying with their family. They're just like, I always have to check my email every hour.
Yeah, no, I think it's common. I think we're all attached to our phone, scrolling through at the hip nowadays too. I'm totally guilty of that. The advice I would give, and of course I'm going to preach this advice, but I need to take it as well, is I'm a huge list maker. Clearly, I'm very focused on my organization, time management. And I think, again, it's setting aside, if you're feeling anxious, if you about needing to get back to work or needing to do something at a time that you shouldn't be, or maybe it's you've set aside family time or something, I would say before you know you have that scheduled activity, sit down and ask yourself, what am I anxious about? What are the things that I'm worried about? Write them down. See if some of them are actual tactical things. Solve them. If you're worried you haven't prospected enough, sit down, prospect for 4 hours straight, put on a good playlist, get it done, go through it so that you're not worried and thinking about it. So I'd say, very practically speaking, like, anxiety is real. It's something we don't talk about a lot. You don't need to brush it aside. And if you write down all those things that are making you anxious, if there are certain things that you can actually control and make better, do it. And then the stuff on that list that's giving you anxiety that you can't do anything about, those are the things that you then set aside and say, I've done all the things that are in my control, these things I can't control, and now I'm off and I'm turning my brain off and I'm not going to focus on it. I can't control that. I can't control when this customer is going to respond back to my email. I can't control, when I'm going to get my new book of accounts. These are things that you can't really control. And so I think set that stuff aside and then disconnect as best as you can. And if it's helpful for you to have someone who has set aside, like when we go on, our 1 week of July shutdown or our two weeks in holiday shutdown, there are days where I'll set aside, okay, I'm going to check my email for 15 minutes on Tuesday. Like, that's my dedicated time. And so if it's Monday night and I'm having dinner with my family, I'll know tomorrow's the time where I'm going to stress about that. That is my dedicated stress time, my dedicated email read time. So I think it's two-pronged. Control what you can control, and the rest of it let aside. And if you're someone who needs those check-ins, then schedule them so that you're not doing it while you're with other people.
That's such good advice. I love Yeah, because I think so many of us, it sounds like you have a really strong internal locus of control. I think that's like the terminology for it. So you have a good awareness that, look, let's say, I'm just going to put out a number, like 50% of life I can't control, right? Whether it's all external, whether it's macro, pandemic, like industry related. But what I can control is allocating time to, hey, if my pipeline's a little bit low, like prospecting, right? Hey, so it is cool. Like that's really good advice. I think too many of us are too focused on the external stuff. Like, oh man, like everyone that's applying to this role, like they're so smart. Like, how can I get this role? But you're focused from within, because at the end of the day, you can only control like your within, right?
Exactly. I mean, you can't control so many things. So it's just focus on yourself. And not only will that actually make you feel better a lot of times, sometimes it makes you do better too, because now I'm focused more on just my pipeline and what I'm doing, or my deals, or, my professional development, whatever it may be. And I do this in my personal life as well. If, I'm having conversations with friends and I have anxiety about something there, then we talk about, okay, well, what are the things you can do and what are the things you can't? And you can only stress about, if you can't do anything about it, then you can't worry about it as much as you do. And again, I will reiterate, I'm preaching this, and I tell that to myself to take my own advice as well. And I'm definitely not perfect at it, but it is a great framework that I use, and it's been really helpful for me.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Alyssa. I really appreciate all of your advice. I think this is applicable to like any human being, right? Not just people who are in sales development or in account executive. So yeah, I really appreciate you. And yeah, just want to acknowledge you for just being like an inspiration to all of us and really showing us what's possible if you take your job like seriously and you're committed to the job, and and also like just being able to help people, like you don't have to always help people, right? But it's a choice, it's a decision. And that's really cool that you take the time to just help people out and give back to the world. So I really appreciate you.
Of course, I appreciate you, Davidson. I feel like you are so great at acknowledging your feelings and emotions, and it doesn't go unnoticed. So I'm so excited to have had this opportunity to be on your podcast, and I can't wait to keep following along.
Yeah, I'm sure that there'll be more to come.
Yeah, I'm sure. I can't wait.
Prize reps one day. That'll be cool to kind of see what new takeaways are year to year.
Absolutely.
Take care.
Okay, bye-bye.
Well, that's it, folks. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Please subscribe and let me know what your thoughts are. If there were any takeaways, I welcome all positive and constructive feedback and hope you enjoy. Stay tuned for more interesting stories and guests. Take care.